Hi guys, I am finally back on air. I've had a lot of people messaging me saying that they've missed me not being on and they love the live Facebooks. So I'm on. I do apologise that I haven't been on for a couple of days because I've actually for once followed doctor's orders and I've been flat out on my back for a couple of days. But all good, all surviving. Now, last week, I was talking to Jane saying, what should I talk about on Facebook Live? And she said, well, you've got the whole Brangelina, which is Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie breakup. So she was like, why don't you talk about Brangelina? And I was like, So you know what? I'm saying come dive with me down the rabbit hole. And the reason why I'm saying that is because, you know what, guys, I haven't been on for a couple of days and I've had a lot of stuff going on in my head about what I wanted to talk about with things that I have been watching. Now, when it comes to the Brangelina thing, look, to be honest with you guys, really, it's their private life. And if we're going to be logical about things, we talk about relationships a lot, and this is what I want to talk about time, love, long-lasting relationships. And this relationship's been going on for, I think, over a decade from memory. And, I always talk about the fact of the Mr. or Mrs. Right for right now. So I want you to keep that in your mind as I'm talking about some other stuff to do with this topic, because when they met, they were their Miss and Mrs. Right for right then, right? That was their right now. And today, if you don't grow together, which they did, and Jane always talks about the 4 seasons and about your relationship needing to go around the 4 seasons. And I've had a relationship where we tended to do 3 seasons and kept skipping, but you could only do that for so long. And the seasons, and what the seasons are about, is it's about growing together. So for those of you that are joining me, look, I haven't been on for a couple of days, so I do apologize because I haven't, been well, but I'm up, and this is as good as it gets today. So I'm in my tracksuit, which is a very unusual thing, but this one is going to be a big topic today. So strap on the boots, because you might be a little bit shocked with some of the things that are going to come out of my mouth today. Because, even though the whole Brangelina thing has been happening and they've broken up and a lot of people are shocked, but, there's a lot more to it. So I watched this. Absolutely, and sorry about my if I'm going a little cracked up, so hang in there, because for some reason it happens to happen a lot at this time of night because everybody's at home and using the internet at the same time. Okay, so I watched this amazing movie last week, and it was Beatrix Potter, okay? And I was just really, really taken by this particular movie. I knew about Beatrix Potter. So if you don't know who it is, it's the author of Peter Rabbit. Just bear with me one sec, guys. I'm going to try and quit my internet that I'm using here and see if that's going to help any better for this weak connection. Okay, so pretty much Beatrix Potter, the story of her is that it was set in the 1900s. Okay, she was actually born in 1800 and something, at the end of the 1800s. And she wrote the tale of Peter Rabbit. So for those of you that have actually seen or read the books Peter Rabbit, they became quite famous. Now, the story with Beatrix Potter is that she has been following, she's really great with drawings and stuff like that, and had all these little stories that she said as a kid. She always wanted to go against the wishes of her class and of her family, and also back then in the early 1900s, completely against, what women are supposed to be doing. So she writes this story and she gets knocked back left, right and center. So for you business people out there, you're going to get knocked back. Rejection is part of it. And that also happens in relationships, but keep going. So she kept going, and finally she found a publishing house that literally said yes. But they had a younger brother who wanted to come into the business. So these older brothers, they fob off the book and Beatrix Potter to their youngest brother, who's called, from my memory, Norman. Now, Norman and Beatrix start working together, and he's really excited, and he really wants to prove his brother's wrong, but he's really excited about what she does. So he takes her to the printers and everything. She's very hands-on, which again is non-traditional with what you're supposed to do back in the late 1800s and early 1900s. So basically, 1902, the first Peter Rabbit, The Tale of Peter Rabbit by Beatrix Potter was released. And that was one of the first, I think, of 30 books that she put out. Now, the point of my story is that Norman and Beatrix came from two different classes. He was classified as a tradie, and she was a little bit more of an aristocrat. Her dad was a lawyer, so they're quite different classes. And firstly, back then, you couldn't date traditionally. And even today, it's funny because in many cultures, you still can't just go out on a one-on-one date. And she always had, a lady that was with her the whole time. They actually do have a name for it, and I can't remember it right now. But what happened was she always had the chaperone there, and they were never left alone, and they were not supposed to fall in love. But guess what happened? They did. Then what happens is they decide that they're in love and they want to get married. But of course, her family's like, this cannot happen. They said, look, this is what we really want. Rah. So the family go, you're coming with us to the country. And they always used to go to Scotland for a holiday. And you're coming with us for 3 months. And we'll see if this is just going to fade away after the 3 months. So she gets on just as she's getting on the train, they have their first and only real interaction physically, and there's steam coming out of the train, and in that steam he grabs her and he kisses her. She goes off to the countryside to Scotland, and every day they're writing each other, and she's receiving these letters, and it's just oozing out of how much this has been 3 years now, 3 years of being in love with someone, yet not being allowed to touch them or tell them. So she's getting letters every day. Now, and bear with me, guys. So she's getting letters, and then the letters stop. And then eventually she gets a letter from a sister, and she finds out that Norman, and she's 39 years of age. Okay, so let me point that out. She's 39 and he's 37. And the letter says that he has got quite ill, and she rushes back to London and finds out that he's died of leukemia. So this 39-year-old woman who's supposed to be following tradition and following her class of who she's supposed to be marrying and all the rest of it, loses, and this is not a woman who ever wanted to get married, loses the love of her life. Now, I think what we forget is that we're talking about the late 1800s and early 1900s. But when I think about how we behave today, I actually don't see it any different. Think about it. If you're Indian, and for those of you that don't know about this, in India they have, I think it's 5 or 6 classes. And when you're born into that class, it dictates to you where you go in life. So the lowest class, these people are cleaners. That's all they'll ever do. They're the people that are cleaning and looking after you. They can never do any of these other ones. And then the higher ones, they're the doctors and the, and the surgeons and the IT people. And when you're born into that class, you can't be an artist, you can't be a cleaner. You've got to be one of these people. This is today, by the way, all right? So if you're Indian, depending on what class you are, will depend on who you're going to be. You don't get a say, which is why I totally understand, after living in India for a little bit, why they want to come here, because this is their only opportunity to break out from the mold of their own classes. And the classes is not only the kinds of jobs you get, it's also who you're allowed to marry, and most of it's still arranged marriages. It's also how much money you're going to make. So, you know, when we're talking in this scenario of Beatrix Potter, you know, it was basically her marrying a tradie was marrying down. Now, I find this quite funny because I know that my ex-mother-in-law, she had some serious hairy balls, this woman, and she did say out loud that my partner was marrying down if he was to marry me. Now, granted, her family had money. They were ironically all tradies, and they owned businesses and they had a lot of money. And in fact, they were the poorest of the millionaires. You'd never know it. I mean, seriously, they were like, Aldi shopping was the top of the barrel. So, which was funny because I got my mum's nose completely out of joint because she's making a judgment and we're making a judgment on somebody else. And ironically, on my mum's side of the family, they were a shitload more wealthier than his family. So we talk about classes. Then you've got tradition. So with Beatrix Potter, the tradition back then is that this is the way you don't show your ankles, you don't show your neck or anything else in the middle. The women had to be chaperoned, you know, and some of this stuff is still happening today. And then we've got the next one, which is religion. And religion is going to dictate who we do and don't love. My point is, nothing's changed. Today, we are wasting time. You are wasting time. Now, when it comes to the Brangelina thing, they never wasted time. They knew what they wanted, regardless of where they were. And I'm not saying go and chop families apart or anything, but remember that we only get to see what the media shows us. But they met and they felt something and they fell in love and they didn't waste time. And then they came together and then they grew. And regardless of what anybody and what the media said, Brangelina and everything, Brangelina, I love the name Brangelina, they went and took that risk. And to do that means that you have to conquer your fear and your vulnerability. And they didn't waste time and they got together. And granted, we're over a decade on, and they grew and then they started to grow apart. And this is what happens in a lot of relationships. And then they're actually going in two different directions. They're no longer on that same path. Okay, then they start to go this way. And she wants to do, for her values have changed. And even though family was always really big and humanitarian, they've actually just come up even more on the list. And it is a much bigger priority. And for him, he was attracted to that. And their values matched. And then it's sort of like, well, now I want to do something else. And they're going this way. And so again, they're not wasting time. And they're actually going their own way. Fear and vulnerability are the two biggest issues that we have. Now, whether we're in the 1800s or whether we're here today, we need to conquer that fear. So are you literally stopping yourself from feeling that complete, deep, passionate love? Are you telling yourself that you don't deserve it? Are you telling yourself that you can't have what I call the cake and eat it too? Do you know how many guys that I meet? More guys than women, but women are doing it too today. How many guys that I've met, specifically when we're talking about late 20s to mid 30s, in their mind, they believe they cannot have a career and a relationship at the same time. That's what I call the cake and eat it too. They don't believe that they can have this. They believe that they need to work on their career so they can make their security. And then once they have the security, then they can have that relationship, if they believe they can even have it. I've met guys where they honestly do not believe that they can ever have both. That they believe that their mission is so big and their desire and their passion for their career is so large that they cannot have an actual relationship. Well, they can have relationships that last, 1, 2, 3 nights, where it's a flippant thing, but not have a real relationship. They do not believe that they can do this. Very sad, because I'm going to tell you right now, you can. So for those of you guys that are listening that think that you can't have your cake and eat it too, let me tell you, you are so freaking wrong. You are so wrong. You so can have this. Because let me explain to you what happens when you're in a relationship. And this is for you women too, because I know you women are also on your career paths, and just like, if I have a relationship, this is the words, you're going to either be vulnerable, you're scared, or, you believe it's going to be a distraction. Let me tell you what happens when you are in a relationship and you're in a loving relationship, that you let go. You let go of being vulnerable. You let go of your fear and you freaking go in head first. When you do that and you just erase all of that stuff and you're with somebody, let me tell you, your work, your career, and your finances blossom. They go through the roof. Okay, sorry, my connection's bad again. God, I've got to stop doing this at night when you guys are on, because I get a bad connection. But I want to tell you, when you let go of this stuff and when you're with somebody that makes you smile, that you are intimate with, that someone that you couldn't imagine being with anyone else, let me tell you, shit changes and your life goes through the freaking roof. Sorry, this is what happens. This is definitely what happens when you let go of your fear and your vulnerability are the top two. Okay? Now, we're talking about the Brangelina thing, where these guys, they went for it. And now they've made a decision that they're going their own way and they're going for it. They're not piss farting around going, oh my God, need to worry about the children. Children aren't stupid. It doesn't matter what age they are. And everything you do in front of your children, they soak it up like a sponge. All of us do, okay? But we're talking about Beatrix Potter, the author of The Tale of Peter Rabbit, the bunny, running down the rabbit hole. Now, Beatrix Potter was put in an era where we weren't allowed to do anything. We weren't allowed to go out on dates, and we weren't allowed to marry outside of our class, and we weren't allowed to allow ourselves to love somebody, because even back then, the Westerners were doing arranged marriages, just like they do across the globe everywhere today. Most countries still have arranged marriages, and you learn to love. It happens in my family. Okay, but what I'm saying is that, your decision to waste time to think that you can't have your cake and eat it too because it's going to be a distraction, or the fear of being with someone and losing them, or the whole concept of being vulnerable and letting someone in, is a waste of time. You are missing out if you do not go and take time by the balls. 2 hands, all right? Take it by the balls. And don't waste a second of it, guys. If there is someone out there that you like, tell them. Stop sitting there and waiting for the right opportunity. I know somebody who wasted nearly 30 years of his life waiting for the right opportunity. And by the time he got to that point and he actually didn't approach, but was approached and said, why have you never said anything? It was too late. Do not waste time because of fear and being vulnerable at all. It is so worth it. I've been married twice and I still think love and relationships is worth it. I know that your life will blossom when you let go of the fear and the vulnerability. And you go out there and you see someone, if you want it, what is the worst thing that they can do? Say no. It's better than not knowing, isn't it? Okay? Because let me tell you, one decision that you make in your life can completely and utterly change your entire life. I wrote an article and I was talking about the very first guy that, I'm going to sort of say first real boyfriend. He was the crush that I had in school for years, and I thought, it was way out of my reach. And finally, I actually got this guy, and I think I was so gobsmacked. It's like, he's done, like, he's way out of my league, was my attitude. Okay, so I got the guy at school that I thought was completely out of my league. And I'm a teenager. And we went on holidays, and it's called summer break. And we lived, you know, one of us was in Dandenong, or actually Dever Hills, I think, and I lived in Frankston, so we're miles away from each other. But we talked on the phone, and I ended up meeting another boy. But what happened was, on one conversation, just one conversation, he freaked out on the phone because his ex-girlfriend's parents had turned up. And they'd said that they think she's pregnant. And all I heard with that was, oh my God, he's not a virgin. And I shit myself, because I was at that stage, right? So we're teenagers. And I'm like, oh my God. So I've met these two men. I met the guy that I was nuts about for years, and this new guy. And I knew the new guy was a virgin, and I just discovered the other one wasn't. Sorry if my connection's weak. So what did I do? The man that I had dreamed of being with, instead of communicating with, I dumped him. I dreamed about him for years, and I finally got him. And I went with the other guy, purely because of fear. Fear, and I felt vulnerable. Because I was like, oh my God, he's not a virgin. He's going to expect me to do something. I'm going to go with the safe bet of the other guy. That one decision completely changed my life. Because let me tell you, I picked the wrong guy. I picked it on such a level that, let me tell you, he completely changed everything. That man, by the way, still, we're nearly, what are we talking, 28 years later, still refuses to talk to me. Turns out that not only does he look like one of my ex-husbands, which I found ironic later on when I saw photos, obviously I have a flavour, but he only recently got married after all these years, and he never had children. Isn't that funny? Because I never wanted children either. So it turned out, because of my fear, that I went the wrong way. And let me tell you, the so-called sweet and innocent guy was far from sweet and innocent. And I became a statistic. So we've learnt nothing over the years. I hate modern history, and this is the reason why, because I think we've just got dumber over the years. So I'm saying, don't follow the path of modern history. Don't be dumb. Don't waste time. Don't waste time thinking that you need to have a career first, that you need to have a certain amount of money first, that you need to follow this list, that you need to meet a certain kind of guy or girl that meets certain criteria. Get it, screw it in a ball, throw it away and burn it, preferably, okay? Do not allow your fear and your vulnerability to actually stop you from doing the most wonderful things in life. Whether that is finishing a relationship and moving on, or starting a new one. Because when you are doing these things with time, your whole world changes. And it's not just the chemicals that are running around. Everything improves. When you go and let go of everything and you fall in love with somebody and you allow that vulnerability and fear to drop aside, your career will get better, you will make more money, and things will be amazing. So when it comes to the Brangelina and what's happening with that, let me tell you, I'm a supporter, because they're making decisions and they didn't waste time getting together. They didn't waste time growing together. But right now, they're not Mr. and Mrs. Right for each other. So they've made that decision and they're not wasting time to allow them both to go on their own paths, to go and meet someone else that's their new Mr. or Mrs. Right. When it came to Beatrix Potter, my heart absolutely shattered when the love of her life, that because of society and the way things are supposed to be, that they weren't able to, he died. He died a month after they finally said, we're going to do this. They only got to have one kiss together, one. and that was it. And the love of her life was gone. So do not allow time, culture, tradition, money, to stop you from going out there and having that loving, lasting relationship. Have it with yourself first, and then have it with someone else. So don't waste time, guys. That's my thoughts. Sorry I haven't been around for a couple of days. That's why this one's a little bit longer than normal. I will see you tomorrow. I will be getting interviewed on the radio tomorrow on a WA radio show. So hopefully we can get a clip of that, and I'll pop it onto the intimacy.com.au website. Other than that, be good. Don't waste time. And learn to love yourself. Bye.